It's pretty gut-wrenching if your goals in life were to be a sports person. Yeah, there's talk therapy, obviously, and then there's CBT, like cognitive behavioural therapy, which is I find a little bit more constructive.
Once I put this on my podcast, it will be there forever.
So I think people need to be more aware of it, and they need to build an understanding around it if they're going to be able to support people.
And it just, that snowball, it's a horrible cycle.
That one looked a bit weird too. We'll try some different ones so that's not weird.
It's just awesome.
It's like the high level of satisfaction, but there needs to be another word for it. I want to be that close to the water that I'm, like you say, I can have a daily ritual with it. I have one of the, I guess, crappiest, most traumatic parts of my teen or adult life. I was 18, I went overseas and in a backpackers in Miami. All of the things that you hope never happens to you as a young person or as an older person in another country.
I appreciate you being open about that. Welcome back to The Brave and the Wild. In this episode, I'm joined by Laura Kuggeleijn, a teacher, passionate diver, and someone who's been through a lot and come out the other side with some powerful insights. We talk about everything from growing up outdoors and being diagnosed with ADHD in adulthood, right through to her long-term battles with invisible illnesses and how the ocean became a form of therapy. Laura also opens up about surviving a traumatic event in her late teens and the long road to healing that followed. So as a bit of a content warning, and just a heads up, this episode does include conversations about physical and sexual assault, chronic illness, and PTSD. It's honest, raw, and at times it's heavy. If any of that feels like too much today, please take care of yourself. You can skip this one or come back when you're ready. Cheers. Well, Laura, welcome to the Brave and the Wild podcast. Actually, super happy to have you here because some of the things you're going to talk about are things that I've actually experienced over the last few years, and we've spoken about it. Couple of the topics, one of the topics in particular. So I'm excited to pick your brain and hear more about it. But I guess to get started, how are you? You're a teacher, so you're actually on holiday at the moment, aren't you?
Yes, I should say I'm gloriously relaxed. It's half the truth. I'm on holiday. Yeah, I'm on holiday. It's good.
And what have you been doing with your holiday?
Honestly, not as much diving as I would like, but I've been out surfing with my mum this morning and hunting with my dad and visiting family and seeing friends and my brother and sister's babies and all the things that most people sort of do at Easter. So, yeah.
I saw on your Instagram story that you tried your hand at bow hunting last weekend.
Yeah, I had my first real beginner bow lesson with Dad, so it was interesting.
Do you enjoy it, or do you prefer a rifle?
No, it was really fun. I actually think, I don't know if I like it more than normal shooting, but it's definitely very fun. It's a lot harder than I thought it would be. Dad's like, you need to go to the gym. I was like, do go to the gym, calm down.
I was going to say, I think you do go to the gym, don't you?
But no, it's pretty hard. I think he just liked to feel stronger than me at 70-something years old. He just wanted to showed me how it was done.
Yeah, nice. Well, you've still got another week of holiday?
Actually,
no, you don't, because it's a short...
couple days.
Yeah, these short weeks get away on you.
I feel like I've been ripped off this holidays because everyone else is on holidays.
Yeah, well, we've had, 2 short weeks now?
Yep, but no, the weather's, I think it's one of those times of year where everyone's freaking out, like summer's gone and you want to go out and do like all those outdoor activities because the weather's getting bad, but it's still pretty nice here in the Mount in Peppermore, so...
And Did you enjoy your summer? Did you get out and do a lot of dive? I mean, we'll talk further about this, but I know a huge passion of yours is spearfishing and diving and being in and around the ocean. Did you get a lot of time doing that over summer?
Yeah, I was going to say, be careful starting me on that topic. I did, but I feel like I was trying really hard to have like a balanced summer because I've spent the last couple of years and last couple of years straight just diving heaps. So I was trying to do lots of other things and get back into surfing and spend time with other people who don't spearfish.
Nice. And was that successful or did you just go diving?
No, I tried my best, yeah. I had a balanced summer, so I did a really cool trip up north and saw heaps of the upper North Island of New Zealand that I hadn't ever seen. So yeah, no, it was really, really good. I'm very grateful that I get such a long break off work. So, yeah.
Nice. Well, it sounds like you've made the most of it, and you've got, what's the weather looking like for the rest of your holidays now?
It's classic. I swear, every time I get a 2-week school holiday, I look at the diving weather, and it's always average. So there's been a storm, so the weather's all right, but the actual viz on the water is just mud. So I think I might be diving on Friday on Anzac morning, though, just to get some muscles. But, yeah, no, the rest of the holidays is all right weather, but not good viz. So
nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got another question for you, which I'm going to put you on the spot with. How do you feel? The stuff we're going to talk about, I'm not sure how often you talk about a lot of this stuff. How have you felt in the last couple of days since we had a call planning this episode about sharing this sort of thing? Because this podcast is about that, but I understand that for a lot of people, sharing things they struggle with in life isn't super easy. So I was just wondering how you've felt over the last couple of days leading up to this.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been giving it some thought. I'm not kind of like, I'll just jump on and like talk about a bunch of private stuff. But I think most of the stuff that I'm gonna talk about with you, I feel like you've been really supportive about how I talk about it, so I feel pretty comfortable. But it's definitely not the kind of thing that I know. I think I'm comfortable talking about it with people in person if it comes up and if it's something that, you know, naturally comes up or becomes relevant. But I think when you intentionally talk about something on, say, like a podcast that gets recorded, your head starts going like, oh, people are going to be like, why'd you talk about that? Like, that's why you're oversharing, you know, no one wants to talk about that stuff or hear about that stuff. So it does, I guess, bring up some stuff for me that maybe in the past few years was definitely stuff that I thought I shouldn't talk about or that maybe people didn't want to hear about. Or even things that you just think, once I say that stuff, people are going to know that, and you kind of can't take it back. But I think that's all part of it. Like, if you can't share your journey, are you kind of, I don't know, if you keep your journey to yourself, and that, you know, that's your choice, cool. But I think for some people, sharing your journey could be for yourself or it could be for other people. And I guess in this regard, I'm sort of thinking about it more like how it might help other people, not necessarily doing it because like I want to talk about it and like, you know, yes, love hearing the sound of my own voice. Let's have a yarn about all the crap stuff that's ever happened in my life. But more so in that kind of way of like, yeah, bringing awareness to certain things. Because I think it's important to talk about certain things. And hey, if people don't want to hear it, they can just not listen.
Absolutely. And that's the thing about podcasts and actually most online content. There's a stop button or a skip button or a pause button, or there's chapters, and not every part of every episode will resonate with everyone. But I think, and actually I know based on conversations I've had with other people, that some of your experiences will resonate with people. So I deeply appreciate your time and your openness to jump on and have this discussion with me.
Cool. I mean, I might be single forever after this, but, you know, one of my mates was like, oh, why are you going to talk about your life on a podcast?
Well, you never know.
Feel good. Might make some friends. Trauma bond.
So to set the scene, tell me, what sort of kid were you? I know you were born in Endometriosis, right?
Yeah.
And then you spent your younger years moving around a lot, didn't you?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one because people always ask you, like, where are you from? And you don't want to say you're from somewhere that you didn't spend your whole life sometimes. You feel like a little bit embarrassed about that. But I've accepted now. As my dad goes the other day, he goes, you're just kind of a gypsy. But a lot of my family still live in Endometriosis and Hawke's Bay, so it's really easy to say, oh, that's home. But I've started saying to people in the last few years that I have a lot of homes, I guess, and I've spent like significant time in quite a few different places that are like really important to me, and I still go back to a lot of those places. And I've accepted now that I don't need to say I'm from one area. But yeah, I was born in Endometriosis, and then I've gone back there every kind of holidays ever since. And then me and my mum, and partly me and my mum and my older brother, moved around a lot of different places. I spent a few years in Rotorua, Ohope. I still have to even think about it. Hard to remember. Napier and Hawke's Bay, majority-wise, in my high school years, and then like Wellington, Christchurch, recently Auckland and stuff. In terms of growing up, I usually just mention like the Bay of Plenty and Hawke's Bay and that Manawatu kind of area.
Yeah. So you lived quite a rural sort of childhood, spending a lot of time in outdoors. I know we discussed the other day you spent more time outside than you did on devices and with technology and things like that.
Yeah, I don't reckon you'd even mention that back then. You wouldn't be like, oh, these are the things we did, how great it was we went on iPads. Like, it was just normal. But yeah, so it was kind of like a mix of like either spending time at the beach or outside or like on the farm or in the bush. Like, my grandparents were farmers, so I spent a lot of school holidays and time like visiting my grandparents, and they were still on a farm at that point. And then they moved to the Hawke's Bay to the beach. And then my dad's always been on like a lifestyle block or on sort of in farming areas. And yeah, that's just kind of the norm of everyone that I spent time with growing up, all those significant people like my grandparents and my mum and my dad, and both of my mum and dad's new partners. Like, that's kind of the environments that we spent family time. So yeah, the beach, the bush, hunting, boogie boarding, whatever it was that we were doing. So you've got a good appreciation for nature and the outdoors, and I think that sort of you've carried that through your whole life, right? Like, that's still a very important facet of your life now. Yeah, it's kind of, I guess, that thing you come back to. If like maybe it's, I don't know whether it's because it is so good for you and you notice that, or whether it's just like that's what you were exposed to when you're younger, and the people around you use those things to get their mental and physical well-being from it. So it's pretty easy to veer away but veer back to that stuff. So yeah, everyone in my family is super outdoorsy, super adventurous, super sporty, super fit. It's not something we talk about. You know, you would never be inactive in my family. Like,
yeah, okay.
And you wouldn't not spend time in nature. Like, it's just, yeah, like go away for a few days over the weekend. Like, my mum and dad at different times with them, all anyone's ever talking about is, animals and farming and trees and getting outside and, collecting shells. Just that's just normal. So yeah, when people ask me about that now, I sort of think, yeah, I guess that is what I was exposed to. And we read a lot of books. We didn't watch a lot of TV. I mean, we still kind of don't that much. So yeah.
And how did you find school? Would you have preferred to been outside, outdoors, and not at school, or did you enjoy school?
I think I never know how to answer that, because as a teacher, I should probably appear like I was like really onto it at school. But I think I was a pain in the ass. If I look back, I definitely was a pain in the ass to a lot of teachers. But I think I just got bored easily. And then because I moved so often, you're changing friendships, you're changing teachers, you're changing towns. Like, I think you just get used to kind of just fitting in.
Did you find that hard, or do you think it built a bit of resilience and constantly? Because if I think back to being a child, I remember starting a new school being very daunting, and I didn't love it. And I actually remember struggling just changing to a new school and making new friends and meeting new people. But I guess if you're doing it constantly, you get better at it and get good at it.
I think now as an adult, I almost get bored if I don't. Like, it's easy. I've never thought about it that way. I think I remember being a little bit sad in between. I moved at the end of year 9. I was in, I got into the accelerate class and made some mates. So maybe made a sports team. And then the end of year 9, we moved from Rotorua to Hawke's Bay. And I was gutted then. I think that was more because you start to really make friendship connections and stuff like that. Whereas when I was younger, it was just, oh, cool, off to a new school, whatever, let's make some friends. Normal. Yeah. Didn't worry me. I think now I look at it and I kind of think that's why I find it so easy I've started numerous teaching jobs, I've moved to different towns, I've gone to different universities, even just with things like surf club and spearfishing group, I just don't find that scary. To the point where I have to remember for other people, it is scary to turn up to something. And I try and think about that a lot and think, okay, this might be easy for me to reach out to people, to message people, to go somewhere where I don't know anyone. But I know that that's not that easy for other people. So I think probably having grown up like that is why that's not hard.
Yeah. And do you think it makes you a good teacher or adds to your repertoire of skills in being a teacher, having been to all those different schools and the different, I'm guessing, styles of teaching you experienced?
I definitely don't think I've mastered the art of teaching. I don't think I ever will. I definitely don't think I'm an amazing teacher yet. But I think being able to put yourself in that mentality that for some kids, different ways of learning, or like just the kids who maybe operate a little bit differently, or if they've got stuff going on at home, or I know if kids are new to school, or they've got family things going on, I find it quite easy to kind of be like, I remember when I had that going on, or I remember when maybe I was being a bit of a smart ass. Sort of, it's easy to kind of, I guess, jump into that not classical student behaviour, I guess, to kind of put myself in their shoes. But I'd say most teachers would be trying to do that. But the connecting with kids is a bit I find really, really easy in teaching, and it's a bit nice. I enjoy. But
which I'm guessing is as important as delivering the curriculum.
I guess some people wouldn't agree, but I think good luck delivering the curriculum if you can't connect with kids. If they don't like you a little bit, or think that you care about them, or understand them, or whatever, I don't think they're gonna really learn that much or that deeply. Like, it's definitely I have my opinions on all that stuff, but I think that connection with them as who they are and how they learn and stuff is the biggest. Their well-being, their identity is definitely, for me, that's the core of how I teach.
Yeah, okay. And you mentioned you were in an accelerate class. So were you a smart student?
Some people who know me now would be shook by that, especially my mates who have to read my text messages. Bro, you're so dyslexic. I'm like, I wasn't when I was younger. There are reasons for this. But I don't know how, but you do those tests. They don't do it anymore, but they do those tests, I think, around like intermediate age before you go to college, and you get put in whatever, top stream class. So I guess I was smart enough in that area of New Zealand to get into an accelerate class, but I always struggled with maths. So I remember them having this conversation about, hey, you're really high in these areas and English and stuff, but, you're going to battle with the maths. So,
I want to jump forward for a second to your age of 27, when you actually were diagnosed with ADHD. We'll talk about that, but my question is relating back to your early school years. Did you notice, or were you told at that time that maybe you learn differently, or is it something that, thinking back now that you have that diagnosis and the knowledge you have now, is it something that's been with you your whole life, or is it something that sort of became more conscious later on?
I think when you do that whole like looking back where there's signs, definitely not the classic. My parents are still a bit puzzled. They're like, really? You ADHD? But I think maybe they were just so good at like getting me outside. If I couldn't read, they were just like, well, we're going to sit here and we're going to read. So I think looking back, like I got put in a gifted and talented GATE program at my Napier Girls High School, and I remember thinking, like, why am I in this group? Like, why are we meeting up every week? Like, what's the go here? Like, we're a bunch of Fruit Loops. What's happening? But I do remember them asking questions in class, particularly at college when you hit NCA, but why? So my dad's real big on, it's weird because there's teachers on both sides of my family. Both sets of my grandparents were teachers, one on either side. And so my dad was always like, oh, I want to teach you, this is his slogan, he'll love this, how to think, not what to think. So I grew up with question everything. And so when I went to school and I questioned everything, you were often told things like, we don't have time to talk about that particular NCA level. So it was, oh, that's not in the test, or we don't have time to talk about that, or you just know when adults start to be like, when you ask questions, there's a way you think about stuff. And I think now I just accept that I do think differently. The way I process stuff's different. The random ideas that I have about things are obviously not how everyone thinks. So at the time, the older I got, the more I think I realized that was the case. But in terms of, say, behavior I definitely probably exhibited some of the I was kicked out of my year 13 English class.
I was about to say, was it misbehaving?
I don't even fully remember, but the worst part was at my high school, because I was deputy head girl, so it was quite an honour to be a prefect. So to be kicked out of my class in English in year 12 or year 13 is not great. I think I got kicked out of PE one day too, because I said so. I just would often blurt out inappropriate stuff, I think. And I don't think I was trying to be funny or be a clown. I think I'm a bit outspoken, and I had been to a lot of schools, and that particular school was quite strict.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I think, coming from different schools and schools run differently and different teachers expect different things. And, that was kind of looking back, becoming a teacher, you go, oh, I was that kid a lot. Whereas at the time, I don't think I knew that's what was happening.
Do you notice as a teacher children who maybe think differently or learn differently or communicate differently?
100%. And I almost try not to do it, because you don't want to label kids or, judge them. Or I try to kind of think of it rather than being oh, that kid seems like they have ADHD based on what I know about ADHD. Or if a parent or a school record says to you someone's got Asperger's or autism, I try not to then be oh, these are the things I know about that condition. So now I'm looking for that from little Jimmy, I think a lot of the research and stuff that came out when I first started teaching was all about just treat each kid as an individual. So even though, you might be looking for a kid who's got certain learning disorders, or you might pick up that you think they're dyslexic and stuff like that, or maybe even just trauma, stuff's going on at home, they don't seem quite right, like abuse or that kind of stuff. Those things affect learning just as much. So I think I'm always hyper aware of those things, because I know how much that affects a kid's learning, but also just their general well-being and their sense of self. So I find it hard not to look/notice those things. But I guess you kind of just have to circle back, regardless of labels, what's going on for this kid. Are they upset today? Are they being rude? Are they struggling with friends? are they really struggling with this maths problem? Whatever it is. So,
Your insight and your life experiences, I think, would make you a better teacher. They have to. They make you more understanding, empathetic, more aware. And like you say, you're knowledgeable enough to be conscious of not pigeonholing students or anything like that. It's nice that you have that awareness to notice things.
I think I'm just lucky. I had a couple of teachers that I reckon if I hadn't had them, or the parent support I had, or, the tools to go and be active or whatever, I think I could have easily slipped through the cracks, education-wise or life-wise. So I just sort of think, how influential some of those teachers were that I had, that helped me out and helped me get my NCA, direct me towards sport, directed me towards drama, whatever it was. So I guess that's kind of pretty much why I became a teacher, so that I could do the same that people did for me, or,
And you were super sporty through school, especially in your high school years?
Yeah, I mean, my whole family is really, really sporty and active, so I don't think there was ever going to be much choice that, we weren't going to do something. But I definitely, and this might be a little bit of the ADHD stuff coming through, I think I tried every single sport. And the problem for me was you can't be in, I wasn't the best at everything, but I'm highly capable and coordinated, if that makes sense. So I found it really hard to pick which discipline of sport that I wanted to do. But I definitely was that classic kid of I went to school to eat my lunch, play sport and go to the art room and go to debating or drama or hang out with my mates or whatever. Like all the other things I did at school was why I ended up liking school.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And the social aspects.
Which sport did you choose, or sports?
I guess the sports chose me because I played all the classic like netball and basketball and all the kind of things you play that are the cool sports, or if you're tall enough and stuff like that, and dabbled in a bit of cricket because that's in my family and all those kinds of things. But when I found rowing, I think I would have been year 11 maybe, so like 13 or 14, and I was a relatively tall and unity child. So I think I was the height and size I am now when I was in year 7 or 8, so I kind of got plucked to some rowing day, come and try flat water rowing, and then that was it. That was my poor family, my poor mum. That's like all I talked about and all I did and all I cared about for the end of high school pretty much. So people who knew me then would be like, oh yeah.
So that was the rowing was your passion throughout high school, and you got pretty good at it, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of people put a lot of like time and energy into coaching me, and I guess they saw some potential in that, in me doing really well in that. And I was actually like 2 years behind Emma Twigg. That same school, same coaches, and that was pretty rough now looking back. I used to think I sucked because I was like, oh, Emma Twigg's so much better than me, and now she's like been, world champ medals a couple of times and stuff. But it was a very big sport in Hawke's Bay and for our school and stuff. So yeah, I just got really involved in it. I think I just love being on the water and all the other people. Like I actually really liked being in the team crews better, but I ended up in a single scull for sort of the end of my being good at it, I guess, because that's often how you progress into the New Zealand teams and things like that, is by being able to do single sculls as well. But I loved sweep oar and team rowing more than I did the single. You
also enjoyed rowing boats in horrendously big waves, didn't you?
Yeah, I switched it up. I think at the end of my flat water, I didn't crack the New Zealand team. And the training was so hardcore for flat water. Someone who I knew who did surf lifesaving was like, you should come and do surf lifesaving, blah, blah, blah. They do boats, they do canoe, da-da-da. And I was like, yeah, like I'll give it a go. And basically like never looked back. Like once I joined surf boat rowing, it's just so much more extreme waves. The people were probably more my jam. They were just a bit more chill. You got to spend your weekends at beaches. You could train a couple times a week, but you didn't have to get up at like 4 a.m. and bike to Clive in Hawke's Bay like I used to. So, yeah, once I made that change to surf boat rowing, that was the next obsession.
Yeah. And so that took you through to the end of high school.
Basically started doing surf boats, I think, in maybe my last year of high school, and then I did it right up until just 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then near the end of high school, you experiencing health symptoms.
Yeah, it would have been around doing heaps of training for rowing. I think I basically
So still the flat water rowing?
Yeah, I was doing flat water rowing, and I think I probably overtrained. I got glandular fever somewhere in the mix, and I think year 13. I mean, you hear about it a lot with kids like trying to study, trying to do sports. I was definitely probably doing too much. But like I said, I just like being involved in everything. And in my family, it was pretty normal to want to do really well at sport. And, I did care about passing NCA and that kind of thing. But I was also just doing lots of other things and trying to be really social. And yeah, I think I got glandular fever and then hurt my back. And that was kind of it. Like I got maybe my first summer out of high school when I did surf boats. I think I had a crash in the surf boats. So when I was talking to you about it, it's actually really hard to like look back and keep almost a timeline of like health stuff, because you just go, when did all that start? But yeah, I think I had issues with endometriosis and pain and tiredness from like year 12 and year 13, and sort of it just never really went away. And a few other things, got diagnosed and came up since, but yeah, I think go back as far as year 12 and college was sort of the,
turning point.
Yeah, and when you've got a family who are pretty athletic and, have a farming background and that, it's pretty hard to say to your parents that you're battling, or you can't get up, or you're too sore, or you're too tired, or, whatever's going on. So it took a while for me to sort of, I think, get through to my parents that, like, I wasn't just like a teenager growing.
So following the glandular fever and at the same time overtraining and living life and studying and having a social life, things started going downhill with your health?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, that's the last time I remember not having the symptoms that I still a little bit experience, but that's as far back as I can remember not having issues with fatigue, energy, pain. Yeah.
And what did you see a doctor after the glandular fever when the fatigue started, or was it something that went on for a while before you got it addressed?
It definitely went on for a while, but I think we approached it from the endometriosis side because, like you said, as a teenager, if you're having like super bad periods to the point where it's affecting you playing sport, my mum was like, let's get you to the doctor kind of thing. And so once they kind of went that route where I was like, this is obviously affecting my pain, my tiredness, all that kind of stuff, I also got diagnosed with ME, or chronic fatigue, a few months kind of following that. So, yeah.
Was getting the chronic fatigue diagnosis hard?
Yeah, it was pretty random at the time. Like, most people didn't know what it was. There was support groups full of like 56-year-old women, and I'm 17, 18 going, you're going along to these groups and they're all talking about going for walks, and you're like, what? So there were support groups that existed, but it was this constant conversation of physios don't understand what it is. Some doctors don't even believe it's real. So I ended up having a lot of really awesome doctors over the years, but I also had some real difficult medical people that, chiropractors and physios. You go to all these people, right, as you'd know, because you have issues. So you're like, oh, maybe it's this. And I think CFS/ME is still constantly being researched and understood, and particularly with stuff like COVID. Now everyone's like, oh, long COVID. So everyone's like buzzwording it and seeming to understand. But it's been around for a really long time, and a lot of the people that research it usually say you have a tipping point. So it could be, a car accident or glandular fever or something like that. So eventually when I went to someone for that, that's just kind of where I began this big long visit to many health people and spending lots of money and eating lots of vitamins and all the things that come with the joy of invisible illnesses that other people can't see. And yeah.
And that's the hard thing, right? It is invisible, and it's hard to explain. Just for the sake of those listening, this is something, chronic fatigue especially, is something that entered my life just before COVID, actually, and it's something I still battle with a lot now. It is getting better, and I've spoken to you about it over the a while now. I try not ever to compare things medically or along those lines, but I think you have had it to quite a bad extent. And I guess for people who don't know what chronic fatigue syndrome is, can you describe a bit about what it was like going from a super active, super sporty, accomplished rower into the surf boats, the surf lifesaving, and also having the very active family life and outdoorsy family life? What is it like to suddenly get hit with chronic fatigue syndrome, and what did that feel like?
Yeah, I guess it's pretty gut-wrenching if your goals in life were to be a sports person, because that's what I thought I was going to do. And to be given a diagnosis of something that was a bit wishy-washy, which I personally think is how it was presented to me at the time. It was a bit like, we don't really know what causes it. We don't really know how to fix it, but you probably need to do less. It was just a bit, and it was all kind of like, some people take medication. I was told things like, you may never get over this, you might never work full time. Like, it's just stuff you don't want to hear when you're like 18, 19, 20. And you don't want to hear it any time. dealing with, I guess you have to adjust the fact that you're trying to understand what's going on, and then add on top of that, you're trying to tell other people that you have this thing that no one really understands, or if they Google it, it doesn't really, it just sounds odd. And also because often people would see me, say, at rowing or at surf boats or at whatever it was at, and I grappled with, do you tell people, or do you just, have this kind of almost hidden illness lifestyle where, I guess in your early 20s and stuff, or high school in particular, you're trying to be social, you want to go and do things, and I was a really social person, so I found that really hard to be like, oh, I'm meant to be resting. And I don't know, maybe this is part of it. Like, I can still sleep for like massive chunks of time, and that's probably what the big indicator for me was. It was like I was still trying to do heaps, but then if I didn't set alarms, I'd sleep for like 18, 19, 20 hours straight.
And did you still wake up tired after that?
Still wake up tired. You're sore, you're tired, it's like, there's nothing worse than people going, oh, yeah, I reckon I've had chronic fatigue, I'm pretty tired sometimes. I'm like, no, I'm talking, this is like months and months of your life where nothing you really do makes it better or worse. And like, as you know, that's, like you say, for everyone it's different. So I can't talk on how chronic fatigue's affected other people, but for me, I was still sometimes able to do some things, but there would just be these constant crashes where it was just like you're constantly sick and tired. And so, it's just, it's not a good place to be in, because you either sound like you're telling people that you just, like, it's almost a lazy vibe. That's like people making you feel like you're lazy, and you want to be like, it wouldn't matter if someone told me I won $1 million and I should go pick it up down the road. Like, I can't get up.
That's the thing I struggled with the most. I found it harder communicating it to people than I did dealing with the symptoms. And we've discussed this, where from the outside, taking you as an example, even in recent times, you'll go spearfishing for a couple of days, you'll go away on a trip, and until you told me you had it, I would have never picked it. But what people don't see is that after that 2 days away, it's that couple of days up to a week, well, it was even for me, of basically being bedridden. And the weight that puts on you mentally, even when you're doing the thing you enjoy, knowing that that's coming afterwards is so hard. And to then say to someone a couple of days later when you get invited to something, I can't, I'm in bed. And like you've just said, but you were out on the weekend, don't be lazy.
I get that a lot still now, because I think even people that know me well, that know I had it, I think they just presume that, because I am a lot better than I was. And it was, on and off over the years that I've had my other diagnoses and stuff as well, which mix into it. But I think I can't remember a time when I didn't have to do like the calculation of I have to mentally be like, can I do that much in the next few days? And what do I have following that? I've only just mastered it. And I've been dealing with these so-called diagnoses since I was, 17 or 18. And I'm only really now just saying I can manage working full-time, just. Yeah. I can manage doing some hobbies, just. But it's still, like, I'm sure the same for you, like, this is what people probably don't understand, is that you go, are we going to have a podcast chat? I'm mentally going, what time of the day is that going to be? What will I have done in the morning? What will I be doing afterwards? And that's just how you have to calculate it. And I'm sure everyone goes, everyone gets tired, and imagine, this is what people love saying to me, imagine if you had kids, or like something like that, and you're just like, or I don't know, it's not a competition to be like who is the tiredest, but sometimes you do have to explain to people that you've got boundaries around your energy. And I'm better at doing that now, where I don't even go to people like, hey, I've got some health conditions or whatever. I'll just be like, hey, I'd love to come. I'm not sure what else I've got on, or hey, I just have to check my schedule or whatever. Actually, what I mean is basically I'm just trying to figure out what my priorities are for the energy I can spend. And I have way less guilt now to be like, I went surfing with my mum this morning. I might go diving on Friday morning, that means I don't know if I'm going to make plans to do some other things, because those particular activities bring me so much joy and like well-being and all that kind of stuff, that I'm going to pick doing those things over some other stuff. But because they are physical activities, you just have to be mindful all the time of the energy output of everything, which, as I learned, is also not just physical activity, but it's definitely the one that zaps me the most.
Yeah.
It's those big physical adventurous things.
I can't remember where I read it, or someone told me it recently, but they put it in a really good way that, every day you have your energy allowance. And it might have been a discussion I had with you even. And for me, for most of my life, that energy allowance, I never ran out of it. I could go do things all day, every day and be fine, especially back in my 20s when I'd party at night as well. And as this crept into my life, and I'm sure it's the same for you, that energy allowance for the day, sometimes having a shower and drying myself, I'd have to sit down to dry myself because my energy allowance was gone by the time I finished my shower in the morning. And it was literally just washing myself, drying myself with a towel. I'd have to go back to bed. And I don't think that's uncommon for people with chronic fatigue syndrome. And for you, on top of it, something else we discussed, you got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. I actually looked up how to pronounce it, and I'm still getting it wrong. I always
shorten it to fibro because even trying to say it gives me like a little brain spasm. Fibromyalgia, yeah. I think that's how you say it.
And that also has significantly similar symptoms to chronic fatigue with the added joy of chronic pain. Is that right?
Yeah, so I got led to, they were like, you've got endometriosis, which is, female organ kind of pain and not workingness. Great medical terms that I use. And then chronic fatigue. And then from there, because they were trying to help me manage my chronic fatigue, you're talking to people about what's going on, what ended up seeming to get worse or come about once I had a few concussions was this pain situation. And it was like DOMS. So like anyone who's done any kind of exercise or training or been to the gym, like DOMS is obviously, you get that muscle burn and lactic acid and fatigue and everything from having massive workouts. Fibro, I feel like the best way to explain how I've experienced it is often when you haven't even worked out, you have massive DOMS, and it might be brought on because of that cycle of doing too much or, quote unquote too much, because what might be too much for me or you could be different for someone else. Yeah. But it's that, and it's widespread body pain. So when you get diagnosed, you have to obviously it's like with ADHD or anything, they have a list of, do they have these symptoms? Has to be a certain number of symptoms out of the list, and then you have to have exhibited those symptoms for a certain period of time. And I think I've been re-diagnosed with fibro 3 separate times because sometimes other specialists are like, oh, maybe you were misdiagnosed or maybe you've grown out of it or for whatever reason, maybe it was connected to concussions and now you've recovered. So I think once I got diagnosed the third time, I was like, I don't need to be told this again. I'm definitely nowhere near as bad as I was, but it is definitely the one that I'd say I've probably recovered from chronic fatigue. But you get fatigue-like symptoms when you fibro flare, so you still have to manage your energy. But I know you get sore with chronic fatigue, so it's hard for me to just divide them up because I have had both. But the fibro is almost like paired on your body. So like if you have a sore shoulder on this side, it's sore on the other side usually. It mirrors itself. And it's usually mainly your back and neck and shoulders and stuff, but it can have cognitive symptoms as well. So you can get brain fog, which is basically like, your memory's really crap. You can't think straight just on different days and things. So sort of like overload of that. I try not to talk about it too much, to be honest, because it's like you start listing off, as you know, when you look up what is chronic fatigue. And you start to read all the symptoms and it just sounds real downer. So
it does, and it feels downer when you're constantly having to tell people that you've got no energy, and that's what I struggled. And it's getting better, but I think if I think back to the age you started experiencing it, I think that almost would have been harder because you're a lot more, well, I was a lot more active at that age, a lot more outgoing, a lot more social, and it's almost not as bad now because it's easier to hide away, which in itself isn't very good. But
yeah, I don't think there's an easy time to experience it. I think there's just,
no.
And the further away you get from it, the more you sort of, sometimes you think, it's just not as bad as it was. And then you have a bad day. Like I've talked to you about this before, when you have one of those really bad days and you just think, oh, I'm at absolute rock bottom. Like I thought I was doing so well. And then you have a day where all of those symptoms are there and all of those thoughts about how crap it is and how hard it is kind of get at you. But I guess I've just had more time to handle that and figure out like how to carry on like that. And I guess it's such a normal thing for me to experience. I almost forget that other people don't feel like that.
Well, that's the So you finished high school. The health stuff appeared. You experienced some concussions from your surfboat rowing.
Yep.
What did life look like moving forward? You went to America, didn't you?
Yeah, so I think mixed in with like really, really wanted to do rowing, thought I was going to make a New Zealand team or maybe go to America and do flat water rowing over there. And then getting sick, I went, what can I do for that first year out of school? And a lot of people, they go straight to uni, and everyone was talking about how if you don't go to uni, it's a bad choice. But for whatever reason, I thought it was a really cool idea to go and do Camp America. So you go and work in like summer camps. I'm pretty sure I wanted to be a teacher at that stage, and going to a summer camp and helping kids and doing sport and kayaking and swimming and art and stuff sounded super cool, and do like a little bit of travel or whatever. So that's what took me over there. And the intention was just to come back and go to uni a year later.
And how was America? Was it, I'm guessing, I found with the fatigue and the tiredness, even being at home hard. How was going to America while you're experiencing all the health issues?
I think this is when my habit of moving or going to a different environment to try and distract myself from feeling like shit began. Because I sort of thought, you just, obviously if you go somewhere else and live somewhere else or do a different job, it doesn't go away. Like whatever's going on in your mind or physical body is still with you. But it was a good distraction from that. And the part of being in another country and meeting new people and working with kids and having these experiences, that was really awesome. But as you know, there's a part of it that kind of dampened it for me. So it's long enough ago now that if people say, you went to America when you're younger, that must have been cool. And I sometimes just select my answer and go, yeah, it was a good experience doing Camp America. Yeah.
And what do you say the other time?
And then the other part of me, I guess, if I'm being honest with people about it, is that, at 18, I had one of the, I guess, crappiest, most traumatic parts of my teen or adult life as well. So it's, put me off traveling. And, I guess for me, looking at my life story and things that impacted me and maybe things I didn't deal with at the time. And this was one of them. And it was just, I was 18, I went overseas and in a backpackers in Miami. I was about to come home. I think I had a day or two left till I came back to New Zealand. And I was drugged and physically assaulted and sexually assaulted, beaten up. All of the things that you hope never happens to you as a young person or as an older person in another country, where you can't, you don't want that to happen in New Zealand either, right? But
no.
Being overseas and being alone and being as young as I was, it was a pretty not great scenario to happen.
I appreciate you being open about that. it's easy for me to say, I think it's important to talk about these things. I think it's important. Do you also think it's important to have that conversation in the right context?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been someone who's like hides a lot of things about myself, but I think it's important. Well, there's the part of you don't want to put things on other people, right? Like heavy stuff, because some people don't want to talk about or can't cope with hearing those things. And then there's the other group of people that, especially if you're doing something publicly like this, where it's not just a conversation with a friend in your own home, people start to unpick or judge why you would share something like that because, oh, that's shameful or that's embarrassing, or there's a lot of stigma around sexual assault and, quote unquote rape and all those kinds of things as well. So I think, you fall into a dangerous zone kind of putting yourself under that label. But because my life seems to be an ongoing stream of diagnoses and labels, I think I've started to realize now, being a bit older, that people need to talk about those things because they're not as stereotypical and as you think, and there's a lot of stigma around them. And for me, like, it's important for me to acknowledge and go back, like, one, I got a really bad concussion from it, got on a plane, vomiting and stuff from it, but was in such shock that had happened. And like, again, a part of it is probably for some people a bit strange, but like I'd never even touched drugs at that age. Like having the sporting background and stuff that I had, that was not, I wasn't drinking at the time and I'd never done drugs and I got beaten up at the same time. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just so much stuff to cope with. And I remember at the time, like I didn't even have a phone because it was back when I think Facebook had come around about that time. So it was like an email to my parents, see you at the airport kind of thing.
So you didn't tell them?
I did when I got back. Yeah, I was actually talking to my mum about it the other day, and I was like, "Do you remember like what I said when I got back and stuff?" It's a long time ago. I'm 37, and that was when I was 18. But no, I'm really really close with my parents. There's not a lot I wouldn't tell them, and I didn't probably give as much detail as possible. But I was just like, got off the plane and was like, "Oh, I still feel horrible, and this was horrible." Kind of just knew I needed to tell someone. So, yeah.
Did that end your trip to America, or was that your plan? I
was already coming home. Okay. Yeah, I already had a flight. So I think my flight was like the next morning or like the next lunchtime. So
that's a shit ending to your trip to America.
Yeah, and I remember just thinking like, obviously I should go and like report this, or like what do you even do? Like I was at a youth hostel, and the people I'd done Camp America with, most of them had gone 3 or 4 days beforehand. I had like one friend left with me. And I remember just getting, I couldn't get my like passport out of those lockup boxes. I couldn't remember the code. And I just remember being real frazzled out because I was like, if I don't get my flight, I can't tell anyone I haven't got my flight. I don't have any other money. I don't have a phone. So I just took whatever taxi situation they had then, and I just got on a flight back to New Zealand with a massive, big egg on my head. And obviously, just a bit like, oh, traveling sucks. I can't really fully remember all the thoughts that were going in my head, but you go through a lot of processes that I've unpacked in therapy and things like that, and with other people that I don't really probably need to talk about on public podcasts. But it brings up a lot of things for you, and you do think it's your own fault and stuff like that. I sort of thought, oh, well, it's my own fault for being young and traveling by myself, and don't have like someone gives you like a lemonade or whatever when you're playing pool, like don't take it. Obviously you start to unpack some pretty weird stuff going on. So yeah.
Is there things you look back on now that really helped you cope and process with such a traumatic event that you wouldn't mind sharing? I'm sure, again, for everyone it's different. I assume therapy is a big part of it. Is there anything else, therapy included, that you think was really important to, I was going to say recovering from it. I don't know if that's something you'd ever fully recover from, but for processing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I'm all for classic therapy and counselling, but I wouldn't say that was probably the biggest part of it for me. Like when I look back and go, when did I really address it? I mean, I had numerous parts of counselling, and I asked for help straight away and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of just got back into life. I was like, I went back to surfboat rowing. I went off to uni. I went to some counselling and stuff about it. I talked to my mum about it. Like, there was nothing I kind of really think I didn't give a go with that kind of thing. But at the time, I didn't receive any specific, care or counselling for that kind of event. It was more like, here, you can go to some counselling. It might have even been like 3 or 4 sessions or something, and then you can go to free counselling at uni. But it would get to the point where if I ever raised it or it came up, I would lie and say, I've had counselling for it. Like, I've unpacked this. I'm sweet. It was ages ago.
Yeah, okay.
That's the story I said for years until probably 2 or 3 years ago even. And then I realised I could access the sensitive claims ACC proper counselling, and that there's actually, mental wellbeing help for that particular kind of thing happening to you in a more specific way. So it wasn't that I didn't try and talk about it or get help for it, but I probably didn't realise that I was kind of minimising it for a long time. And I think a lot of that probably came from, the stereotyping around talking about sexual assault and things like that, because once you tell people that, you're worried that they just think that about you for a long time, or you are worried they think it's your fault or whatever. So once I got a bit older, and a lot of other women and males disclosed certain things to me, or, if I was brave enough to mention certain things to other people, you'd hear stories from other people. And it sort of, as I got older, I realised that actually if you haven't dealt with that and talked about it properly in a professional way, or you haven't found some of the things I've found, I can see how it would really stay with you. Like, I can honestly say it doesn't actually really affect me much anymore at all. But at the time, definitely did. And I would go as far as saying the actual concussion probably had the worst effect on me, and the fact that I didn't want to go travelling much at all. Like, I haven't really done any travelling. And I look back now and I go, that's why. But at the time, I didn't know that I was avoiding going travelling because I didn't want to put myself in that scenario. I had sleep therapy, like I went to sleep hygienist therapy for it. I had different things that obviously mixed in with these other chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia type conditions. But one of the things that from that event I got diagnosed with again 3 or 4 years ago, I think they said, we think you still have PTSD from this. And I was like, surely not. Like, I just want to, talk about it in case there's still some leftover stuff, so that I can, make sure that I've addressed it all and done what I can do. And we think you're still suffering some of this kind of stuff. And they were just talking about the way it affected my sleep. So I was like, I guess you can think that you've healed from things, but it's never linear. You're not like, I've got a couple of counselling sessions and I'm sweet, or I guess sometimes stuff comes up at different times in your life with things you haven't dealt with. And I think the sensitive claims system that we have in New Zealand is really awesome that it exists. So that's something that for me is worth mentioning, and that's why I mention it. Like, I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I don't want people to judge me, but people do, and that's natural. People are gonna have their opinions about why someone would want to get publicly on somewhere and say that type of things happen to them. But I think for the numerous other people that might experience it or have experienced it in some form, it's good to mention that there are ways to talk about it. There are people who are supportive, and there is free ACC funded counselling for people who've had a similar scenario, and it can go back as far as like your childhood. So it doesn't have to have happened, yesterday.
That's something I did want to communicate, because the ACC sensitive claims is something I learned about over the last year through some work I do. And I didn't know it existed. And I'm guessing a lot of other people don't know it exists. And essentially it's just for the sake of people listening, for clarity, it's funded therapy for sexual trauma. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure of the wording, because, again, I didn't know it existed till 3 or 4 years ago. But if you have an incident in your life that classes as sexual assault, And they go through it all with you, and they ask you questions and tell you whether or not you can be part of that service. And then there's a number of different things. So I actually was really keen to get art therapy as my counselling, because I had so much talk therapy, and I was a bit like, I don't talk to anyone. I've got friends. Like, not that you should tell your friends about that stuff too much, but I think you absolutely should. Yeah, there's talk therapy, obviously, and then there's CBT, like cognitive behavioural therapy, which is I find a little bit more constructive for things like ADHD or whatever else. But for me, I was a bit like, I need to do stuff. And I found that if I couldn't physically deal with what was going on in my mind, or, just the day-to-day stuff, art had always been a thing for me. So that was something during high school, during childhood, a few hard things happening when I was a kid, moving around a lot, and that when I was younger, and art was my thing. So it was always sport and nature, or it was art. So as I trained to be an art teacher, is actually kind of the direction I took before normal teaching. That for me was like, I was like, okay, well, there's art therapy and you can do it through the sensitive claims. So that's actually how I found out about the sensitive claims, because I was like, how do I get some art therapy? Maybe that will help me do something rather than just talking, because it's not, for everyone, that's not what they want to do. Like, people don't want to sit around and talk about traumatic events that happened to them. It's not necessarily the best option. As you know, things like spearfishing and hunting and getting outside is for some people, that's way more helpful.
I think that's another important point to make. And again, insight I've gained through work I do, and actually people who support me with this podcast. There's many different types of therapy you can do now. And it's not just it's not just talking therapy. There are things like art therapy, there's walking therapy, there's surfing therapy, there's boxing therapy, there's horse therapy.
Yeah.
And it's all these amazing things which I think, actually I know New Zealand is quite behind in. And you look at other countries, especially places like Holland, that this is just the normal, these alternative forms of therapy. And they are now available here in a lot of instances. And a lot of those providers are probably registered with ACC. And when I actually post this, I'll put some links in the description of where you can find this ACC sensitive claims information and the providers. But I applaud you, I guess, for sharing that. I think it's not I see it as being hard for you on two fronts. A, you're dredging up quite a traumatic event, but you're also opening yourself up to, like you say, the judgment and stuff. And honestly, the people who would judge you for sharing that, A, shouldn't be listening to this podcast, but B, probably aren't worth your time. I think good on you. And I appreciate your openness, because I'm sure it will help, even if it helps one person with some insight. That's I think super meaningful.
Yeah, if it doesn't hit with some people, that's cool. It's not a message meant for them. And, it can be related to so many things. Like, it could be something bad that has happened to people, and how do you deal with it and how do you go on with it? It doesn't have to be particularly the details of my event. And do I identify with it now as like the worst thing that ever happened to me? Technically, it probably is, but I guess it's all about how you let that shape the rest of your life, and how you recover from it, and how you, do go on and use it to let you help other people, or it's all in kind of how you let it define you, I guess. And I don't like to let it be something that does define me. So bringing it up does make you think, are you identifying with it as part of who you are? But actually, it is important to talk about those kinds of things. As you know, in New Zealand, it can be kind of a bit of a Kiwi thing to not bring up your issues.
It's a Kiwi thing to not bring up your issues, but it's also a Kiwi thing to tear people down who do put themselves out there. And I'm guilty of it. Like, I am quite self-aware, and I think about times where I've watched things and sort of had a chuckle, and I feel guilty and a bit shameful for it, because everyone's sort of doing their best. And everyone's telling their own story in their own way. And if you don't want to, that's absolutely fine. But I appreciate it. And like I say, I know it will help someone who listens to this at some point, you know. Once I put this on my podcast, it will be there forever. So
don't say that to me now.
So it could be a year down the track, someone listens to it and gets some help from it, and that's still just as meaningful.
No, I mean, that's why I said it. So yeah, for the one person.
So you got back from America, probably in worse shape than when you left. Actually, definitely in worse shape than when you left. And did you dive back into sport? Or what I'm interested in is carrying on the theme of what helped with the chronic fatigue and the fibro. What actually helped you? And I guess I'm asking the things that everyday people could do to help themselves who are experiencing it. And that could be anything from actually finding out what the hell's going on through to, I don't want to talk about prescription medication. I don't think this is the right place for it. But I know for me, certain supplements helped. I know certain lifestyle changes helped. And I'm interested in what helped you after everything you'd been through. You got back from America, back into life. You were obviously doing some therapy. What did you do to move forward and turn into, you know, who you are today, which from all accounts, apart from the days when you're bedridden, you're thriving pretty well.
Yeah, I don't know if we'd call it thriving. I'm surviving and I'm enjoying it most of the time. So I think one day, if I can say I feel like I'm thriving day after day, then hooray. But, you know,
I'll rephrase it. You have days, whether you realize it or not, where you are thriving.
I guess it's a bit of a blur, but somewhere in that mix of years that kind of took me to eventually moving to Mount Maunganui, where I live again now, and studying teaching and going, all right, I'm well enough. And I've wanted to be a teacher for pretty much that whole time since I went to Camp America. Because when I went there, I was like, I definitely want to be a teacher, but I don't think I'm smart enough, and I don't think I'm well enough to do that. But in between there, I mean, things like community. So I've always had to have some kind of sporting community. So it started out with rowing, then it became surf lifesaving. It's led into spearfishing, but I've always been connected to some kind of sporting clubs and communities. And I've played a lot of other sports in between, but those, communities have been really important, and I've always been a really social person. So I find that having good friends and being connected to community has been really key for me, as well as like a few things, like you say, supplements. Like I've had B12 injections for probably since then, I think 19 or 20.
Yeah, okay.
So if anyone ever talks to me about chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia or anything, I'm always like, talk to your doctor about, not that you should ever say this is going to work for you, but because it is something that literally, I mean, you say, you know, not talking about medications, but I guess it technically is a bit of a medication, but it's a vitamin. It's just I get it intravenous. So I get a weekly B12 injection still. Now I'll get to about the most I can go without one is 2 weeks, and I will be slowly basically back in bed.
Yeah, okay.
And that's something that I've tried to come off them. But for whatever reason, my specialists have said, you know, hey, if you want to be someone who doesn't have all these symptoms and don't have to take a whole lot of medication, and you want to work full-time and do sports, this is something that you can have that will still help you. So it helps with pain, it helps with fatigue, it helps you absorb different nutrients and stuff. So, yeah, that's one of the big ones for me. There's different things like magnesium, but I went to lots of different nutritionists and osteopaths and all these different kinds of doctors. I went to some quite hippie la-la doctors. And
you're into your crystals, aren't you?
That one looked a bit weird too. We'll try some different ones, so that's not weird. I
Should
do
be
like
outside
them. But yes, so that's kind of, I went that route for a while where I was like, you know, no dairy, no gluten, no sugar, no alcohol. Like if there's a health kind of approach that existed, I've probably tried it. just because you're searching for answers. You're trying to feel better. Like, you don't want to feel like crap. So, of course, you're going to drink matcha, kombucha, and whatever. Yeah, so I tried lots of different things, and I found I've kind of almost gone, these things did or didn't work. This works for me, this doesn't. I worked in gyms. I had family members who were PTs. I had lots of help with what kind of exercise you can do. Water and swimming and yoga were like really successful for me.
I had a lot of people recommend yoga, especially yin yoga, which from my understanding is the more relaxing version. And I'm quite aware the water stuff is a lot lower impact than, for example, running.
Yeah, I'm not a runner. It's a sprint when I was younger, but I've just accepted that now. Like, everyone's all like 5 a.m. run club. I'm like, probably not for me. But
they should try 4 a.m. spearfishing club.
They should, exactly. Get on a boat, go kill some fish. Let's make a club. But yeah, I guess that's the older kind of life me's accepted that there are certain exercises and certain activities that seem to agree with me and some that don't. And I've kind of figured out my own little kitty bag of like the things that work. And it's like, gotta have the B12s. I don't drink a lot of alcohol. That just doesn't, at the times with concussions, that was the thing that was recommended. It was like, alcohol's not going to help you. And so I'm careful with stuff like that, but I'm careful with the food I eat, but I still live my life. Whereas there were periods of like real restriction where it was like absolutely none of this and none of this. And I found that I still need to live my life. So I'm still going to eat hot cross buns and chocolate at Easter, stuff like that. But I probably, because of the things that go on for me, have to be really careful with like gluten and dairy and alcohol and stuff like that. And yeah, just sleep, like making sure you have like a good routine. I have to do enough movement, but not too much. So none is really not good for me either. But sometimes you get that bad where you can't even hang washing. So that's how
the catch-22, right? You spend all day in bed, and then when it comes time to sleep and recharge, you literally can't. And it just, that snowball, it's a horrible cycle.
And you get a lot of advice from different people about not doing enough, doing too much, what's good for you, what's not good for you. And it can be pretty overwhelming because people want to help you, or they hear you struggling, or they see you struggling, or you ask them, then you tell them. But I think it is a personal thing that you start to figure out what are these things that do or don't help. And for me, I think outdoor exercise and water and nature is so much better for me than, say, just going to the gym all the time, because when I worked in gyms, that wasn't an environment that I found calm. I can go now and kind of like still, I still think weights are important, but I need those outdoor environments and water. And I didn't like things like yoga and stuff when I started because I found I have such a busy brain that sitting still and being told to meditate or do yoga, I was just like,
yeah, I feel you.
This is not chill for me. You just, if anything, you feel like you suck at yoga. So then you're like, well, I suck at this, because you're meant to be relaxing. But I've gotten better at it. I am still trying to do elements of the kind of, I guess, the hippie crystal yoga type scene. There are so many things from those activities that are really, really valuable. I mean, I make jokes and I probably use too much humour. And in the past, with things like the incident that I was talking about before, like I did used to mask a lot of those traumatic things or my illness. I would laugh about it and make jokes about it. And I don't do that as much anymore because I actually think it can minimise other people's experience of having the same thing as me. And it's fine for me to, it's just a side rant, it's fine for me to maybe joke about being tired all the time or being sore or having ADHD or whatever. But I think I just realised I have to be kind of careful with, not everyone deals with their stuff by like making jokes. And you got to be careful when you do that you're not mildly minimising someone else's experience, or I don't know, looking a little bit like you're not dealing with your trauma because you're just making jokes about it. But I kind of can't help it sometimes just because you got to laugh as well. Like, laughter's good. And you've got to laugh about stuff at points. But I think it's, you got to be serious sometimes too and just be like, stuff's hard or stuff's shit, or, and you still got to have that balance and talk about real stuff as well, I think.
I think humour's healthy. I think it's not healthy if you're using it in a completely avoidant way. But it's quite common to use humour to process hard things. So I get that. And I get the struggling with the yoga and keeping your mind quiet. I think that's the sort of thing you have to really commit to and make it a consistent part of life to get good at it. I try it sporadically and really struggle with it. Now, spearfishing and hunting, because I know you've done both probably in the last couple of weeks, are still obviously a huge part of your life. And my understanding is the hunting especially has always been a big part of your life, right?
I guess saying big part of my life is probably not quite correct, because I was never I've never done as much hunting probably as I have spearfishing, to be honest. But it was that childhood when you go home in the holidays thing, and I actually kind of got involved with it in a more keen level probably in the last couple of years. So it's been something that my family and my dad have done my whole life, but I definitely haven't been like a devout hunter my whole life. Spearfishing is still my number one love. It always will be.
And do you consider that sort of your form of therapy now? Like, you've got a brand built around spearfishing effectively. You've got your own podcast about spearfishing, which I'll also put in the link in the comments. Do you still
call it a brand? I'm like, oh, that's a brand.
You definitely have a brand.
Yeah. I guess it's, yeah.
Do you still take the same comfort and, I guess, nourishment from being in the ocean and from being in the bush when you do go hunting? Is that still the thing or the things that are really calming for you in your time off? I listened to one of your podcasts last night, and you mentioned a lot, and it's quite a different experience for me, I must say, spearfishing, which I find quite triggering. But for you, it seems to be deeply calming.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's weird because I think if you really unpack it, like for instance, when I started spearfishing, I was like mortifyingly scared of sharks. So it's not as simple as going, oh, I've always found it this glorious chill place in Mermaidville. But it does have a calm, like even the chaos is calming. And I know it's kind of weird. I sometimes break this up and think, am I just escaping my problems, my pain, physical pain, tiredness, stress of life or whatever, even though I don't necessarily think I have like a super stressful life. Like, I genuinely am really grateful. So I can go out and have a spearfishing day and not think I need to say escape, and still you are escaping, if that makes sense. So like a healthy escape. I get an automatic calm. It's
healthy. There's far more unhealthy ways to escape life.
Yeah, but I think sometimes I talk about the escape part and then I think, you are escaping because, you're not on devices, you're not on a computer, phone for a certain period of time. And I do love taking photos and stuff, but it's that going and being that environment does have an automatic calm, not just on my mind, but it's like physically on my nervous system and stuff. Like, I always just feel like recalibrated.
And the water does that. I'm probably a bit different to most, and it's linked to other things. I get quite anxious spearfishing, but for most people, if you even look up the mammalian dive reflex and studies and videos about that, what it does to your nervous system and your heart rate. An example, if I'm like, my heart rate now is 80, and it's always quite high. If I go for a walk, it goes over 100 straight away. When I go spearfishing, it goes under 60 sometimes, and that's like kicking in current, and it's to do with the water. There is science behind it, and I've read books about it. We were talking about one the other day.
Yeah, Blue Mind. I'm a big fan of that book.
Blue Mind, yeah. There's another one called Deep, but it's, of all the ways to escape work and technology and life, spearfishing, or I think being in the ocean in general, is a pretty healthy one.
Yeah, I think I just look back and go, that's how I've coped with things. It's being outside, it's being in the water. But like even when I did surf boats, and I'm a bad surfer, I'm terrible. Went surfing with Mum this morning. Like, do you feel better when you get out of the ocean? Yeah, you do. But with spearfishing and freediving and being, I don't even know if I took away the actual killing of the fish / collecting my food, because we don't want to necessarily talk about it that way. But I think if I'm just diving, I still don't get the same feeling that I do as actually spearfishing. And I've thought about that quite a lot, because there are a lot of females in the freediving kind of spearfishing scene that maybe portray it a little more like freedivery, and that's cool. Like I almost feel like sometimes I should hide the part of me that's like, I like hunting. I like going and getting my food. But I think that's a part of it as well.
It's a huge part of it. I'm not very good at spearfishing. I've done it for a long time, and I was grateful to learn from people who were very experienced, which kind of threw me in the deep end. And I had sort of a running joke, mostly with myself, that most of my spearfishing trips were exercise swims because I'd never shoot a fish. And then the trips where you do come home with fish, especially, enough to feed yourself for a week, that was like a next level of accomplishment and pride. It's probably like anything where you go outside your comfort zone with a goal and you achieve it, whether you hike a mountain or whatever it is. You achieve your goal. And in spearfishing, the goal isn't really to go for an exercise swim, it's to gather food in a very sustainable way.
Yeah.
So when you do come home, I really appreciated your series of videos last week or the week before with your kahawai that you shot.
I'm smoking.
Yeah, and I was actually going to ask you how the smoked fish was, but it's even, and I shouldn't say even because I love those fish, especially smoked, but bringing home one fish and preparing it yourself is so, don't even know what the word is. It's just awesome.
It's like the high level of satisfaction, but there needs to be another word for it.
Yeah, I think satisfaction and accomplishment is the best way to word it. And for people who struggle with any sort of mental illness or physical illness, especially chronic ones, having that thing like you have with your spearfishing and your hunting, do you think if you didn't have those things, you'd be worse off?
100%. Like I probably could have got into actual fishing at some point, but it just never.
It's not the same.
It was never as interesting to me. I'm more interested in it now, to be honest. But I think even the hunting part, like as much as I love going and having a mission with my dad, and he's sharing that knowledge with me, and it becomes about the connection with the people and the land and your food source. I think the ocean part for me, like I don't know, like because I can't remember a time, even though Mum was giving me a stick this morning. She's like, I remember when you were little and you didn't even want to get in and you were scared. And I was like, what? But obviously there was a time where I was afraid of what lurks beneath the surface. And so it is crazy to think now that that's just such a huge part of my identity and my well-being. But I guess, I want to talk about these things, which is why I think it's important to talk about, say, some of the struggles I've had, because the outcome for me is, look what I found to help me. Because I'm not saying that every person or every kid at school that struggles or every person that's dealt with an assault or whatever needs to go and shoot some kingfish, because it's just obviously not the answer for everyone. But I do think that those healing modalities and being immersed in those nature environments, there's, without even needing to go, there's all this research and prove it to people. I just so deeply know that for me, that is it's an important healing thing. But it is something that I need to prioritize to keep doing, because as soon as I stray away from it, I don't feel myself. I don't feel calibrated. I don't feel fulfilled. Like I don't get, maybe I'm chasing a little bit of a high now, because you get such a adrenaline and a calm. There's this kind of weird thing of like the chaos and the calm and the adrenaline and the excitement. And to be honest, sometimes the stress, like with me with sharks, like I'm still really trying to work through why I'm so bothered by them. But I think
most people are bothered by sharks.
Yeah, and they're lying if they're not. But yeah, I think once you get to, like, even for me, like I'm off on a tangent here, but like for me, just being able to see how I mentally cope with different things with sharks over the last few years. If you'd asked me a few years ago if I'd ever get in the water and do spearfishing and what would happen if I swam near or with a great white, which I've done twice now, I would have told you I probably would have died. So it's such a nutty thing to think that you can, there's just all those different aspects of doing things that you don't think you're capable of. And like you say, going and seeking your own food. Like it's a really complex thing, which is actually why I wanted to do the podcast that me and Elise do, is not to create a brand, which I think is why I find it funny when you say that, because brand is the right term, but in my head, we're telling people's stories and we're trying to share this sport that I think other people maybe don't understand, or capture these stories of people that aren't promoting themselves, because there are a lot of people on social media promoting themselves, and like that's awesome. But there's also a lot of people not telling the stories of why the ocean helps them, or why they love it, or some of the stories that, and adventures they've had. And I think that's why I really wanted to do that, and why me and Elise wanted to spend some time capturing people's stories. And just because I just think it's such a special pastime and activity for so many different reasons.
Spearo Diaries, right?
Yep.
All right. So that's the name of the podcast if you're interested in learning more about spearfishing. And you've had some good guests on there now. I was looking through your episodes last night.
Yeah, we've been really lucky. People are happy to yap away to us.
It's quite a community, spearfishing, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's a huge part of, I think, why people, some people are real solo about their spearfishing, but then there's a lot of people that are really social. Living in Auckland was really easy for me because I was just straight into pool groups and spearfishing groups and clubs and different people offering to take me out. And then I moved back here and same thing. And we've already got some people that I train with at the pool and go spearfishing with straight away. And it's just like it's a really cool community to be part of. And it's quite different even from things like Surf Life Saving Club and that. So
Yeah. I did a podcast with Noob Spearo quite a few years ago now. And it was all around anxiety and spearfishing and the ocean. And what came out of it, which really surprised me, was lots, and I still get them now when people listen to it, even from other countries, people saying, spearfishing has helped my anxiety so much. It has helped my depression. It has helped my relationships. And I often wonder if that's the case with other sports. I'm sure it is. I'm sure other sports have really good communities. I was just quite shocked, even from, spearfishermen I watched on YouTube and really looked up to from other parts of the world messaged me and said, you know what, I deal with that as well. I deal with the same thing. And it's an ongoing battle for me. And it's something I need to get more back into. But I was just shocked how open the spearfishing community was, which I think is why your podcast is going to be very successful.
Thanks. And I think that's why I'm comfortable talking to you on this kind of forum, because I think that we are in that arena of, hunting and diving and fishing and eat what you kill. And I feel like growing up around a lot of those kinds of people and knowing that rural culture and those different activities isn't always the easiest thing to talk about mental health, but maybe the way people talk about it is just a little bit less direct, and they know that doing those activities are important. Like my dad's retired. He probably goes hunting like 3 or 4 times a week. And I love that for him. Like if I tell him I'm not going to come see him because I'm going diving, he's like, have a good time. And my mum's the same. Like there's no one in my family that are going to be like, why are you doing that activity? Because it's just so obvious to them that I'm benefit from it. But it's like you say, like there's so many people in the spearfishing community that I've met that they're from all walks of life. They have all these different things going on, but there's that common thread of like needing to go diving to feel okay, or needing to go diving for a bit of adventure or mindfulness, or whatever it is that they use those words and the vocab. It seems to have that common thread. And I actually remember listening to your episode on Noob before I ever talked to you. And I actually remember thinking like it was quite refreshing because I think like most of your episode is more about you being new. I think you'd only been diving for like a year or something.
It was pretty soon when they asked me to go on it. I was like, I literally only I think I'd shot a red moki and a kingfish and a couple of random fish, but the story for me actually ended up being about how much I struggled through it, but how satisfying I found it. Oh, and it's up and down, and I just always come back to that comfort zone thing. If even, for me at the moment, it's doing this podcast, finding that thing outside your comfort zone, and conquering it, whatever it may be, but especially when it's in the outdoors and the ocean. Like I go to the beach every morning for a walk, and I've been doing it for a week and a half now. It was a little deal I made for myself, and just walking at the beach makes you feel better. So getting in the ocean, to your own ability level, right? Like you don't have to jump on a boat and go way out into the ocean. You can go for a shore dive, which I loved doing when I first started. So yeah, I think it's amazing how much comfort and satisfaction you take from it as well.
Yeah, and I guess that's something I see value in sharing that with people, and not to like rub it in people's faces, because not everyone can go to the ocean and be in the ocean or access spearfishing, but I think we can choose to make lifestyle choices that do impact those things. Like I've moved back to Bay of Plenty to live on Peppermile Beach because when I was living in Piha in Auckland, it was like an hour to work. So it's great living at Piha and at the beach, but I just know for me, as many as there's great benefits of different towns in New Zealand, like I want to be that close to the water that I'm, like you say, I can have a daily ritual with it, just because I know how much it affects me. And if that, that's something I can share with other people, or as a teacher, eventually how cool would it be being able to take kids to gather kina or teach kids to dive, and I know people do it with freediving courses and different kaimoana and things like that. Like that would be epic, like just being able to share therapeutic behaviors and food gathering and all those kinds of things with adults and kids. Like that would be awesome. But for now, being able to talk about it is something that I think is super valuable. And I mean, like you're saying, it's like with podcasting, it's like a new thing sometimes. Like it can be, people probably presume, and I get a lot of people saying to me things like, oh, you must find it really easy to talk, like you're a natural speaker, or I'm a chatterbox, so it must be easy for me and stuff. And like it loosely is, but it's still scary, like putting your voice out there and all those kinds of things. But I think the creative part of doing something that isn't your job, because I mean, with me and Elise, we're paying for everything ourselves. We're not getting paid to do it. But we see value in spending time on it, like it's a hobby and
passionate,
it's a creative outlet. Yeah, we're passionate about it, and it's a creative hobby. And to be honest, I wish we had more time to do it, because you have all these cool ideas and people you want to talk to, but you just kind of fit it in realistically when you can. And like she's a busy mum, and she has a full-time job and a partner and everything, and now we don't live in the same town, so we're trying to long distance podcast, but we'll figure it out.
That's the beauty of technology, right?
Exactly, and figuring out all these fancy mics and all the things.
Well, Laura, I appreciate your time, firstly, and I appreciate more so your openness and willingness to share things that, especially things, I liked how you said, I didn't like it. I appreciated you calling a lot of it the sort of hidden and unseen illness, because it's often hard to talk about things that people can't see. So the awareness you're bringing to it, to everything we've spoken about, will resonate with people. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's why I sort of do talk about it, because I think people need to be more aware of it, and they need to build an understanding around it if they're going to be able to support people maybe. And, but also not, like I was saying before, just not put so much emphasis on people's labels. Because they do help sometimes.
I've got one final question for you. What do you wish more people understood about chronic fatigue and fibro?
I guess it's a hard one to keep concise because I always have so many answers to one question.
Well, okay, rephrase it. What's one important thing you wish more people understood about chronic fatigue and fibro?
Yeah, I guess that don't presume because someone mentions to you that they have a certain condition that they're using it as an excuse. Because I think people can go from not knowing how to talk about it, wanting to let people know, because like the things you and I have talked about where you don't want to let people down or people to think you're lazy, that actually talking about it is actually really hard. So if you're met with like people treating you like you want to identify, like I've literally been told before, I think you're focusing on your problems too much, like you don't need to tell people. But there's a fine line with that. Yes, you shouldn't make your whole identity and life around your suffering or the problems you have, but I think you do need to be able to communicate that you have different needs or boundaries or things going on. And so I think don't presume that people, by mentioning their problems, that they actually want to be unwell, that they want to stay sick, or that they love talking about all their problems.
Yep.
Because actually most of the time, I mean, for myself and a lot of other people I've talked to, they wish that was not the hand they've been dealt, and if they could do anything to get rid of it, they would. So if they're actually mentioning it to you or talking about it, just know for a lot of people that's actually really hard. And the reception you give them, if they have decided to share that with you, that if they have a chronic illness, is not to be met with that they want to be that label or that illness because they love having like a crutch about it.
Nice. I think that's the perfect answer to that question. And to sign off, where can people find you and where can people learn more about your podcast and follow your adventures?
Yeah.
And I will link them in the description.
Myself and Elisa's podcast at the moment is on Spotify, but we're trying to spread on to Apple at some point. And we just sort of have a basic Instagram that we sort of put things up on there. Spotify. And then, I'm not, my spiritual mermaid stuff on Instagram is just on there more for a photo journal for myself about my spearfishing adventures and some of the meals I make. But if people want to have a look, they can
cool.
have a stalk on there.
And just to reiterate, the podcast is called Spearo Diaries.
Yep, Spearo Diaries.
I will post links with this as I release this. But yeah, I just wanted to say again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you. I appreciate your openness.